Okay, so what you don't know is this is actually take 3 or 4. I don't know. Major technical difficulties this evening. Let's hope we can get through this one. So we've got a simple quadratic here. X squared equals 169. When you have this, you want to solve for x, right? Our ultimate goal is always, what does 1x equal? We don't care what 10x is equal. We don't care what x plus 3 equals. We don't care what x times itself equals. We want just 1x. And so just like with addition and subtraction, you would undo in order to get x by itself. Multiplication and division go together. Squaring and squared root go together. They are your opposites. So in order to undo this x squared and get left with just an x, we have to take the square root. And we know that the square root of x squared is simply x. That's our goal. We succeeded. However, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side to keep it balanced. So the square root of 169 is 13. Now, if you did not know that off the top of your head, start with whole number perfect squares that you do know. You know that the square root of 100 is 10. So square root of 169 has got to be bigger. You know I'm only going to give you whole number squares at this point. So what's 11 squared? Well, that's only 121. What's 12 squared? 144. Just keep going up until you hit the one that you need. And in this case, it's 169. Now I want to ask you something. What if instead of squaring a positive 13, we decided to square a negative 13? So negative 13 times negative 13. What would you get? If you said a positive 169, you'd be correct because a negative times a negative is a positive. Because of this, anytime we take the square root of a positive number, our answer is always going to be positive or negative. Because when you square them, you get a positive number. We show this positive or negative by this right here, where you have your positive sign above your negative sign. And we read this that x equals a positive or negative 13. All right, your turn. Try one of these. X squared equals 25. Hopefully you paused the video. What we did is we take the square root of both sides. Square root of x squared is simply x. Remember, this is the square root of a positive number, so the answer is going to be positive or negative, and the square root of 25 is 5, and that would be your answer. Okay, good. What now if we had x squared equals a negative 36? Well, some of you that are going to go fast are going to go, oh, well, that's easy, x equals 6. Ah, don't get caught here. This is different because we have this negative sign right here. You cannot take the square root of a negative number, just like you can't take the absolute value of a negative, or that an absolute value will never equal a negative number. That's what I was trying to say. And the reason you can't take the square root of a negative number is because of what I taught you up there with the square root of 169. So when you see something like this, your answer is going to be no real solution. And you leave it and you go on to the next problem, simply because you can't get anything to multiply by itself and give you a negative number. Good job. Okay, so let's look at something like this. 4 minus 81x squared equals 0. Okay, well, this looks a little more complicated, doesn't it? And some of you might panic on me. Don't do that yet. Start pulling away the layers like you know how to do, as if there wasn't a squared x in there. But let's try to get x by itself. That's our goal. So we need to move that 4, right? We don't want 4 plus an x. We need x by itself. So we're going to start by subtracting 4 from both sides. When you do that, you have a negative 81 x squared equals a negative 4. Now don't stop here just because there's negative signs. You've got to keep going until you're down to where that x squared equals something before you can even think about that. So let's keep looking. Here we're multiplying negative 81 times x squared. Well, we don't want negative 81 times of x. We only want 1x. How do we make a 1 here? We divide by negative 81. Now we've got x squared equals negative divided by a negative. That's a positive. So we've got 4 over 81. Please, please, please resist your urge to turn this into a decimal. This is what I've been telling you all year. From here on in math, it's actually easier to deal with fractions. Right now, we're looking here at x squared equals a number, right? The number is 4/81. We want to take the square root because that's how you undo squaring. And we've got to take the square root of the fraction as well. So the square root of x squared is x. This is a positive number underneath the radical sign. So we can go ahead and do that, and we know the answer is going to be a positive or negative. Now, remember, when you take the square root of a fraction, this is the same as saying the square root of 4 divided by the square root of 81. And that is a lot easier to deal with. The square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 81 is 9. So your answer is x equals a positive or negative 2/9. Okay. Here's another type of example. What if you had 2x plus 1 squared equals 25? Well, here we've got to take care of the squared and undo that before we do anything else. So to undo squares, we use square root, the square root of both sides. Well, just like the square root of x squared was x, if you have parentheses squared, anything inside that parenthesis then is going to be what the square root is. So the square root of 2x plus 1 squared is just 2x plus 1, and the square root of 25 is a positive or negative 5. Well, at this point, you've got to treat this like two separate equations. So what that means is you're going to have to solve 2x plus 1 equals a positive 5, or 2x plus 1 equals a negative 5. Do you know how to do this? Just like we've been doing all year. Subtract 1 from both sides. 2x equals 4. Multiply by the reciprocal. You've got x equals a 2. Do the other one. You get 2x equals a negative 6. Multiply by the reciprocal, and you get x equals a negative 3. So your answer would be x equals 2 or negative 3. All because you have to take that square root first. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you 2 examples to work. I want you to pause the video. I want you to try to work both of these and then restart it and see if you were correct. So first one I'm going to give you is 64x squared minus 5 equals 20. The other one is x minus 7 squared equals 1. Okay. Go ahead, pause the video. Did you do it? Okay, I'm going to work it out for you now. See if you did it right. First thing you do on this one is add 5 to both sides because we want to start trying to whittle away and get x by itself. 64, x squared equals 25. I now want to create a 1, so I divide by 64, multiply by the reciprocal. I get x squared equals 25 over 64. Do not make this a decimal. Leave it this way. We now have to take the square root of both sides. Remember, if we're taking the square root of a fraction, that is the same as saying the square root of the numerator divided by the square root of the denominator. Remember, this is a positive or negative situation here, right? So this is going to be x equals a positive or negative 5/8. Because 5 is the square root of 25, 8 is the square root of 64. Okay, I'm going to move this over so I don't get caught up on my next problem. Let's do this one. On this one, we've got to take the square root first. So we take the square root of both sides. We get x minus 7 equals a positive or negative 1, because the square root of 1 is just 1. Remember, we got to treat these like two problems here. So we get x minus 7 equals a positive 1, or x minus 7 equals a negative 1. Add 7 to both sides. We get x equals 8, or if we add 7 to both sides, x equals 6. So your answer would be x equals 6 or 8. Or you could put 8 or 6. It wouldn't have mattered to me. Okay? Did you do that right? If you did, you're ready for your homework assignment. If not, you need to come back onto that Zoom meeting, ask me some questions, make sure you get confident with this. So your homework for today is page 571, numbers 1 through 12. I hope you have a great day. I'm so glad to be back with you guys, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye.